What's up, party people? Quack, 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 quack. Wearing my John Deere hat. I am not sponsored by them, although you're welcome to sponsor me, John Deere. Okay, so I'm wearing my cool shirt I got from my wife for Christmas. If you walk a mile in my shoes, you'll end up at a bookstore. That's true. And actually, today is a very special day. One, it's my birthday. It's my birthday, yo. And two, I will actually get a chance to be visiting bookstores on my birthday. I love it. I love talking about books and exploring bookstores and just kind of finding that awesome, diamond in the rough. So in light of the fact that it's my birthday and the fact that I'm going to be visiting bookstores on my birthday, I wanted to recommend a couple books to you that really just have a great place in my heart. I've loved these books for years and years and years. Some of them I've read it seems forever ago, and they still have just a great feel whenever I think upon them or kind of reflect on their impact. So some of these books maybe I've mentioned before in previous videos, but I kind of wanted to do something a little bit special in light of the fact that today is the day. So here's the first book I want to recommend, and obviously I realize that, this is almost becoming the name that shall not be named, but Patrick Rothfuss, The Name of the Wind. When I first read this book, I don't think I had any idea what I was getting myself into, but of course it blew me away, as it did so many other people, and I hungrily awaited for the various installments that would answer all my questions. Still waiting. I was such a geek for this. When I was traveling, I found this signed first edition, 10th anniversary edition in the Minneapolis-St. Paul airport, and I was so excited. And this was probably, at the time, more money than I'd paid for a book in quite a while. I kind of love finding the deals and the steals, if you will. But I felt like this book was so special to me that I wanted to get that. And like many people out there, we've been waiting because there's something about it that really just kind of clicked for us. But my concern is, and I think others have articulated this, but the longer he waits, the less, I don't know if I want to say the less I care, but the less it's at the forefront of my mind. But when I do think about this book, I love it. And you're saying, I don't know if I want to start something that's not going to, be finished, and that is the risk. So if you don't want that, where you have a partially read series, then I wouldn't recommend this. But this is in a lot of ways kind of what many books are compared to. This is kind of that one. So anyway, that to me is a book that I think I'll always have some fond affection for, but unfortunately some of the things that have happened with Rothfuss, and specifically even just the inability to get those books out, it kind of is a frustration that I don't really want or need in my life. Here's another book. Actually, this is it's the sequel to the book I want to talk about. So here's the sequel by John Scalzi. It's called The Ghost Brigades. And this is the second book in the series. The first book is the one that I was referencing, which is Old Man's War. Now, for many of you out there, Scalzi is an author that you're familiar with, and some of you might like him, and some of you might not. For me, at the time, it was kind of a cool premise, and while in a lot of ways this kind of might be a book that's similar to some others, and specifically Joe Haldeman's works, the truth is, I really liked the book, and I still think I want to visit that series and explore it a little bit more. So I watched the interview recently with Moyd, where he interviewed Haldeman. And apparently they're friends, and Scalzi and his family, Haldeman. The truth is that he gets some flack, but it might not be entirely that big of a problem or a big of a deal, especially considering the fact that he's great friends with the one whose work he gets compared to all the time. Dies the Fire by S.M. Sterling, and I just kind of found this book to be very fascinating. Of course, it's dealing with, some sort of apocalyptic situation of sorts, and kind of the unraveling of society and what would happen, and you see kind of almost the building up again of tribes and peoples, and you kind of have to ask questions, who's in charge, and what's the structure for a civilization? How do you make this happen and work? And you kind of watch this start to take place, and there's a lot of books in this series. I personally, I've only read the one. I'm on the second one, but I still have a great, feeling about it. And there's some things in there that I personally didn't enjoy, but overall I liked it. And if you've never read this series, this is a cool introduction into that world. I mean, it's our world, but it's having some changes and some effects and impacts. I wanted to get to a couple books that were maybe a little bit more serious, and it's by an author that I particularly am drawn to and love, and that's Ray Bradbury. And I want to kind of draw maybe attention to Something Wicked This Way Comes and Fahrenheit 451. Now, this one is, I think, my copy, the Fahrenheit 451, and I believe I read this in '09. So I had been introduced, obviously, to Bradbury earlier, but I just hadn't read that book yet. He's known for a number of different works. The Martian Chronicles, of course, is a staple, oftentimes required in schools, and Fahrenheit 451 especially. This book, I think something amazing happened to me, because when I read that book, I can remember being on a plane, and there was a paragraph that I read that I felt like, my gut feeling was like, this might be the best way that you could articulate this idea in literature. It was so incredible, and I just ate this up. And I'm fascinated with Ray Bradbury's life anyways. I mean, I've watched a number of different kind of documentaries of sorts on YouTube, and, he's kind of a character, and certainly had a lot of confidence in himself. But for whatever his quirks or maybe flaws might be, at the end of the day, he certainly knew how to write. And I like listening to him talk about writing. In fact, his writing and him talking about that writing makes me want to write. And I'm not a fiction writer. So I just really, really am a big fan of Bradbury, and I have a number of his biographies that this year I'm hoping to actually dive into. Another book that I felt like I needed to do was to read something by John Irving, and this was kind of my introduction to John Irving, The World According to Garp. Now, people my age, we would remember that, obviously, Robin Williams was, the primary character in the cinematic, adaptation to this story. And, there's a very classic scene, we'll just say. I don't know if that was the reason I was interested necessarily in reading it. I think partly because so many people know about the Cider House Rules and, the Prayer for Owen Meany. I just really wanted to look at something in the world of Irving that was not being talked about a lot. And, there are certainly some very, sexual, scenarios and situations in here. Of course, Irving is, he's drawn to, kind of that whole wrestling cadence and lifestyle from being in school, and you find that often in in his dialogue and specifically in this book. And they're very interesting, kind of quirky characters of sorts, and you see them kind of going on this long journey, and this family and he himself is very unique and dysfunctional at times, exceptionally dysfunctional. It's not necessarily a warm, feel-good book, but it is so good. It's so good. In fact, I still have visions and memories of this book in my brain, and I know, at least for me, I know that this would be kind of more on the lower tier of the John Irving books that, if I had a rank, I'm sure it would be more on the lower end of things. But not a lot of talks about that book. I mean, it's an older book, so there would be some dating and stuff like that going on. Let me just say the next few books are massive for me personally, and it being the birthday day. I think that it's kind of neat that I'm going to bring these last little 4 or so books. Here's the first, The Bastard. Now, this is a well-loved copy. It's by John Jakes. I have a memory of my mom reading this book when I was a little kid. I'm not 100% sure when this actually came out. Let's look. 1974. So I read this book, and I still, to this day, have such fond memories. This is a historical fiction. You're placed into the world, of early America. And this protagonist, it's the Kent Family Chronicles, is what these are called. I know that Brian Lee Durfee did some reviews on this series. I can't say it enough. Like, if you are interested in historical fiction, this series is, I don't know, I think it's worth your time. There is a pretty explicit opening, kind of stuff that's taking place. At least maybe it wasn't so bad, but when you're a young teenage kid or something reading this book, we'll just say I was very interested in that book for a little bit. I love the book, actually. So you have, kind of these moments where Benjamin Franklin is showing up, and you have the early writings in the newspaper kind of dynamic, and just the whole infrastructure and the way that, that civil unrest was taking place, the Revolutionary War. It's an epic exploration into the early parts of our country's history, and I loved it. So that to me was amazing. The next one is, to me, I was not expecting this book to move me, but 11/22/63 is, of course, it was made into some sort of a miniseries adaptation, and it was okay. It's whatever. But I was very moved by this book. In fact, I think I even had a tear or two running down my face at the near the end. I did not want to read this book. I mean, I don't know how to say it. I mean, I kind of felt like I'd already seen, JFK, the movie, and I really, that period in our history was so intense, and such civil unrest, and such just difficulty, and amazing heroes, and racial tensions and political shenanigans. Partly, it's a world that oftentimes we run to fantasy to kind of avoid. So in part, there was this idea of, obviously we can't go back in time, and we can't, right wrongs and fix things. And I really didn't know what new answers could he even give me when it comes to this whole situation. We've already exhausted it a million times over. And yet this book was flippin' amazing. I mean, the whole just kind of exploration, and watching and learning about Lee Harvey Oswald. I mean, the research that King must have done in this book is so outstanding. Of course, he lived through this experience as an adult, and for him, there was so much about this that was immediately resonating. And his crafts, his writing abilities, and the craft that he has perfected, I think it culminates almost in this book. It took to me a subject that I wasn't really particularly interested in exploring a lot more, and it just opened this whole world up, and I love this. This is one of my all-time favorite books by Stephen King. The last 2 books I will mention are not fantasy. The first is Louise Erdrich, The Round House. Now, this and The Watchmen, I highly recommend by Erdrich. This book, profoundly moved me in so many ways. And part of this, I get, is just based on, my childhood and growing up where I grew up, and some of the scenarios which are going to be different for you. But she is a master author, and this book is exceptional. So if you've never read Louise Erdrich, I would recommend this or The Watchmen especially. It's incredible. And the last book, which I'll include 2 books, but I have the one, is Pat Conroy's The Great Santini. And the other book I would recommend by him is The Prince of Tides. Let me just say this. If you ever grew up in a home or a situation where things were not easy, or maybe there was some sort of familial tension, there's a lot here that will probably kind of trigger some things. But Pat Conroy, in a lot of ways, in all of his books, is trying to process and deal with the reality of his childhood and growing up in a very abusive and difficult home. I did not grow up in an abusive home. My parents were amazing. I was very blessed. And while my parents were divorced, the truth is I've never doubted that my father or my mother loved me, and what a great gift. Pat Conroy said that when he created and wrote this book, that he had to put in some scenes where the great Santini, his father, did something nice. Because the truth is that never happened in real life. And he said that nobody would believe him if he actually wrote the real story. So he had to create at least an occasional moment or two where the great Santini is in a complete turd. I have to say, this book, though, will forever just have left a mark in me and caused me to think back upon it with not only just an intensity and an affection, but I don't think I can forget it. Now, here's what I would not recommend. I read back-to-back Great Santini and then The Prince of Tides. I would not recommend doing that. I actually would try to give some space between those two books because there is a lot of some kind of overlapping with certain things. And so they're both, I mean, whatever, 11 out of 10. They're above and beyond. So those are some of my reflections and encouraging you to explore book recommendations, some book recommendations. As I kind of think back on my life, I'm very blessed and I'm very grateful. And most of you don't know this, but I'm very blessed to be able to travel around the world and do presentations, and I love it. I love the people I meet. Most of my business is repeat business. I get the chance to interact with people all over the world about the most important things in our life, faith and family and just personal growth. And these kind of books here, in a lot of ways, have helped me to be the person that I am. I mean, and in part have opened up doors and ideas that I would never have thought of otherwise, or given me the ability to be compassionate and to relate to people whose experiences are far different. Whether it was The Bastard and kind of the historical fiction and the beginnings of our country, to sometimes the dysfunction of people and their journey with John Irving, or just some of the hopes and desires and expectations, wishing we could redo things, whether it's King or Bradbury, or even just trying to process through some of the pain we've gone through in our family upbringings with Conroy. All of these authors are, to me, like really important authors. And of course, Conroy has passed away. We won't have any more books from him. And Irving has just put out a new book, and he's older. We'll see, and hopefully he can be around a while longer. Bradbury's passed away, of course, and Scalzi is still alive, and Rothfuss. But the truth is that none of us know how long we get, and I think in some ways it's such a blessing to be able to soak in the artistic expression of some of these legends, and I've been very moved by them. Maybe you could tell me a little bit about what authors have moved you, like what authors kind of helped shape you. There's so many more I could talk about, just from my childhood. Just those books alone from when I was a kid, monumental, life-changing books. I'll do a video on that at some point, but this was just kind of quick. Here they are right next to me. Let me just talk about a few of these things. And as I go about my day and enjoy, my birthday, the truth is that I'm thankful for you, and appreciate you being a part of this whole journey with me as I'm just having fun and talking about books. Honestly, I love this stuff, and I hope you do too. So most of you know that I have an Amazon wish list, and if you want to get something, you can. You don't have to, but there's there. And then there's a little Discord link and all that stuff. Let me know what you're reading. So, okay. All right. You say goodbye first.